When it's done right, cold calling works. Cold calling can get you into conversations that nothing else can. The problem is that most people don't know how to do it right. So let me show you. Please watch all the way through to the end, because I've got a couple of really interesting, exciting bits at the end for you. And as always, if you hit the subscribe and the bell for notifications, that means you won't miss out on any of the coming videos. And because I know you're busy, so it's always good to hit the subscribe and the notification bell, and that way you'll always know when the next video is coming out. I'm Stephen Long. I've spent 30 years researching sales and influence, and I've spent the last 20 years working primarily with recruitment companies. I've trained about 50,000 recruitment consultants, and I've also founded, built and sold my own executive search firm specializing in financial markets. The perfect cold calling process has 6 stages to it. I'll walk you through each of those in turn, but before I do, let me just address one issue, which is a common comment that I get. I was going to say complaint, but that'd be a bit harsh. Common comment that I get from people is, oh, I don't want to use a script. I want to be spontaneous. I want to, I want it to just flow naturally, and it should just be like a chat between people. Well, the last point I agree with completely. It should be just like a chat between people. But scripts work. Scripts allow you to lay out the ideal process and the ideal sequence and the ideal questions to ask and the ideal way to phrase things. That doesn't mean that you can't divert off them. It doesn't mean that you can't use them like sat-nav as a guide, and you can veer off into a side road, and you can go off down the country lanes, and then the sat-nav will bring you back to the ideal route for you to get to your destination. Improvisation, when you have a script, improvisation when you have a framework, is fantastic. It's a great idea, but it's all about having a framework to base everything from. It gives you that path to come back to. So the first stage of the perfect cold call is very simple and quick. It's the greeting and inoculations. The greeting is very simply, hello, Mr. Mrs. Ms. whomever. My name's Stephen Long. I'm calling from the Stephen Long Group, or my name's Dick, Jane or Spot, and I'm calling from XYZ. Simple as that. Now, I know that there's a school of thought in sales training that says you shouldn't bother introducing yourself. You should just jump straight in, and well, that's just weird. That's weird and rude and makes no sense at all to me. Never has, never will. Introduce yourself. It's just polite. And besides which, if they're going to tell you to sod off, it's nice if they can do it and call you by your first name. The second part, so firstly greeting, then what we call inoculations. Now, I used to have to explain inoculations, but we're all familiar with the idea of inoculations and immunization now. Basically, you're given a weak version of a virus or bacteria or whatever, with the purpose that you develop antibodies against it. Which means that if you do get exposed to it, you don't get the full-blown version with all the symptoms. Now, a psychological inoculation is precisely the same. So what you do with a psychological inoculation is you acknowledge a probable, a very likely objection. Now, what are the likely objections on pretty much any cold call? Well, whether you're calling a candidate a prospect, whatever the situation is, they're going to be not expecting a call, they're going to be busy, and they're going to want you to be quick. So acknowledge that. There's no point pretending it's not there. It's like having a massive elephant in the room and just ignoring it, hoping it goes away and nobody comments on it. So introduce yourself. Hi, my name's XYZ. I'm calling from Dick, Jane and Spot Limited. Sorry to catch you on the hop. I know you weren't expecting the call, and I appreciate that you're busy. Let me just explain why I'm calling. That's it. So the key to the greetings and inoculation is not just the words. The key is how you do it. It ain't what you say, it's the way what you say it. So if you make the call and go, hello, I'm Dick, Jane or Spot, and I'm calling from XYZ, and I know you're really, really busy and you weren't expecting my call, so I'm going to be quick. Now, I've actually got a sore throat trying to do that noise. The point is, if you deliver it in that style, then yeah, you sound like an idiot. You sound like a wimp and you'll be told to clear off. If, on the other hand, you sound confident and it's just being conversational. Hi, it's Dick, Jane or Spot. I'm calling from XYZ. Sorry to catch you on the hop. I appreciate you're busy and you weren't expecting the call. So let me just explain why I'm calling. That's it. That's the greeting and introduction. That quick, that easy. Move on to the next stage. Having done your inoculations and got the conversation at least, if not engaged, at least you have permission to go forwards. What we then have to do is to pitch the call. You have to persuade the other person to give you the time to actually get through the rest of the process. So the second stage, pitching the call, is absolutely crucial. And what you're trying to do is to give somebody a reason to give you their attention. Or to put it another way, you're buying the next 60 seconds. This pitch isn't designed to close the deal. It's purely designed to get somebody to go, okay, yeah. So let me give you an example. This is how I would deliver it. So let me explain why I'm calling. What I want to do is explain the kind of results we've been able to achieve for other firms in a similar situation. And obviously at this point, I've no idea whether we'd be able to do the same for you. But what I want to do is take 3 or 4 minutes, explore it a little bit and see if there's a match. If there is, we can carry on talking or we can schedule another call. And if there isn't, if it's not going to work, then, we can part as friends and I'll never darken your towels again and I'll be out your hair. Is that all right? And that little question at the end, is that all right? Does that sound okay? Does that make sense? That is purely designed to get them to go, yeah, I suppose so. However begrudgingly, it doesn't matter. As long as they go, yeah, I've won and I've bought myself a minute. That's all I've done is buy 1 minute of their undivided attention, and that's fine. That's a win. The third stage of the process is the positioning pitch. And the purpose of this fundamentally is just to give somebody a reason to carry on the conversation. You're going to explain who you help, you're going to explain what kind of results you deliver and how you do it. And you're going to do that in 1 minute or less. It's fundamentally an elevator pitch. And any pitch consists of 4 stages: hook, story, facts, and call to action. If you're selling business to business, you need hook, story, facts, and call to action. You need the facts so that people can justify any decision they take to their colleagues or their bosses or to finance or HR or whoever. So hook, story or case study, facts, and then a call to action. The hook is just a statement of what you've done for other people. So what we've been able to do for other firms in a similar situation is, and then you're into a statement of what you've done. The second stage is the story. So the way I would introduce it, and again, this is my style, it doesn't have to be yours. I know that's a big claim, but let me give you an example. And then I'm going to give you a really quick testimonial or case study or example of what we've done for somebody. And then the third stage, which is facts. And we did that by doing this. So that explains not just what you do and how they can benefit from it, but how you do it. And then the call to action, again, I fill the call to action with inoculations. I do it because I know you'll find this difficult to believe, but if I'm not careful, I can come across as just a little bit of an arrogant arse. I know you'll find that difficult to believe. Trust me, I understand. But, I've had that feedback from time to time. So let me explain how I would do the call to action. I'm not arrogant enough to think that, we can definitely do similar sort of results for you. But if we could deliver something similar, would that be worth a conversation? Now, I'm deliberately not asking an open question at this point. I don't want the conversation rambling off in all sorts of different directions. I want it tight, and all I want is yes, in which case I'm on to the next stage, or no, not under any circumstances, in which case I'll save myself the time and go off and talk to somebody else. I should say, by the way, at this point, if you ran the whole thing through, which if you have a look down in the description of the video, there's an option for a download there, and you can download an entire guide, a workbook about how to design the perfect cold calling script. And you can actually see in there as I build the script up word for word to go all the way through the call. At this point in real life, you'd probably only be a minute, maybe 90 seconds into the call. It's much longer to explain than it is to actually do it. So you're about 90 seconds maximum into the call at this point. So the next stage is by 5 minutes. I have no other way of describing it more succinctly than that. By 5 minutes. And the way you do that is very, very simple. Like an awful lot of things, it's simpler than you think. Here's how you buy 5 minutes. Great. So what I like to do is spend 3 or 4 minutes just asking a few questions, and then I can give you a more specific idea of what we might be able to do for you. Is that all right? So I've told them the process. I'm going to ask you a few questions. I've managed the timescale, 3 or 4 minutes, and I've made them a promise. At the end of it, I'll be able to give you a more specific idea of what we can do. And then I've finished with that little tag question. Is that okay? Or does that make sense? Is that all right? Is that all right with you? Is that fine? Is that okay? That little tag question just to get a yes. That's it. Mission accomplished. I can now move into the next stage, which is the qualifying questions, the real heart of the process. 5th stage is the qualifying questions. Having bought 5 minutes, let's use them wisely. The qualifying questions do 3 different things. They're general open questions, and they are there to prove your credibility to the other person. Now, if you ask questions that only an expert in their industry, not in recruitment, that's kind of assumed. They assume that you know what you're doing, but only an expert could ask certain questions about them and about their industry or their company or their current job. So ask questions that only an expert could ask, and then they will automatically assume that you know what you're doing in their industry. The second thing is, these questions should qualify the prospect or the candidate in or out. And the third, and probably the most important aspect of these qualifying questions, is they create interest and desire in the prospect. It's to get them thinking, ooh, that's interesting. Well, if we could do that, what would that mean? Or if they could do what they're talking about, oh, what kind of impact would that have? And if you can get the prospect or the candidate thinking that sort of way, you have done 99% of the sales job. So the qualifying questions qualify them in and out, prove your credibility, and create interest and desire in them. So you've probably got 2, 3 maximum in terms of the number of questions you can ask. That's it. And then you're into the call to action. So hopefully this is making sense for you. Question I'd have for you is, what do you think is most appropriate for? Is it really for you to engage those candidates, the really good candidates that you're trying to engage and get to represent, or is it more appropriate for you to start dealing with better or more interesting prospects? Is this making sense for you so far? I'm conscious that I'm basically sticking a fire hose down the lens and throwing lots of content, lots of information at you. Hopefully this is making some degree of sense for you up to this point. Now we've come to the sixth and last stage of the process, which is the call to action. So what you're trying to do in your call to action is honour all the commitments you've already shown them and get them to agree to an action. So let me give you an example. I would say something like, great, it certainly sounds like we've got something to talk about, but I'm conscious that I said I was going to be quick, just 3 or 4 minutes. So should we continue the call a bit, or should we arrange for another call back, or maybe for a meeting? What would you prefer to do? What would you prefer to do? That gives somebody a choice. It makes it up to them. But actually, I've given them 3 options. The options I've given them are literally, shall we carry on? Shall we have another call, or shall we meet? Those are the options I've given them, and they're now choosing from those options. It doesn't sound like I'm giving them an alternative close, but I really am. Now, perfectly fair response at that point is to go, hang on, Steve, if the call's going really well, why wouldn't I just carry on talking to them? Why wouldn't I just carry on with the questions? Because you made them a promise. You made them a promise at the start of the call that it would only take 3 or 4 minutes, and then if there was something to talk about, you could talk further, and if not, you could part as friends and you'd be out of their hair. You made that promise right at the outset. Don't think for a second that just because they're having a nice chat with you, they haven't remembered it, because they will have done. So the call to action is to get them to give you permission, consciously, out loud, give you permission to carry on the sales conversation. And it's really quick and simple, as with all of this, frankly. You're not trying to shoehorn everything into this one conversation. The reason people try and do that is because they're not confident enough in their ability to get everything back on track on the next call, or in the next Zoom meeting, or the next face-to-face meeting. You don't have to do everything at once. You can be patient and thorough if that's what the client needs. If they are happy for you to just keep straight on and you've engaged them and they're really ready to have the conversation, yeah, go. Keep them on the line for the next 2.5 hours. Absolutely. I asked you right at the start of the video to keep watching to the end, because I've got a special offer for you, which I am happy to follow through on, because as we talked about earlier, if you make a promise, keep it. So if you look down in the description, you'll see a link for a free download. It is a free download. There's no upsell to a $997 course. It's a free download, and it's called the Perfect Cold Calling Script, and it's a downloadable PDF, and it just walks you through this entire process in much more detail than I've been able to here. And you can actually follow the building of the script all the way through, from a blank page through to a completed cold calling script. And just click on the link, and you can download it straight away. Share it with your friends and colleagues, print it as often as you want, save the PDF and distribute it, whatever, really. It's yours. Do what you like with it. And hopefully this has been a useful and beneficial video for you. If it has been, please feel free to click on the subscribe button and like, obviously. But if there's any questions that you want to ask me, if you want to get into more detail about things, leave a comment and I'll reply through the comments for you, so you can quickly get that little conversation going. Alternatively, if it's something a little bit more confidential that you don't want to get into in a really public forum like YouTube, you can drop me a DM via LinkedIn or my Instagram. The details, if you go to the main account, you'll be able to find the details there on the main account. So, cold calling works when you follow the framework, and now you have the framework to follow. So the only question is, who are you going to call first?